There we go. Okay. Has anybody got any questions? Just got a couple came in. Not very, not thought them all the way through, but got a couple that just came in. Oh man, are we going to have a lot of maple seedlings coming up this year? Those are all the flowers on that box elder, and every one of those is a potential seed. You know, a pair of seeds, the helicopters coming down. There are a lot of maples that we pass by that look like they're leafing out the wrong color. Then you look at them close, and it's not that they're leafing out the wrong color. They haven't even barely started to leaf out yet. It's that they've got all these keys, they're called keys, the maple seeds, all these maple seeds developing brown or reddish, pinkish. Yeah, those years are just phenomenal. There's that much stuff. Teresa, are you here? Teresa asked about, yeah, hi Teresa. You asked about Sweet Summer Love, clematis last time we were together. And I thought, I've heard of that sweet. It's one of its parents is the autumn clematis, is the sweet clematis, Clematis terniflora, which I kind of thought. And the other one is a undisclosed clematis hybrid. There's a nursery in Poland, a couple of brothers, I think it is, who have done wonderful things with clematis hybridizing, and they're not telling anybody what they crossed it with to get those little purplish pink flowers on it. But if you look into that, if you look into Sweet Summer Love clematis in enough places, enough old Plant Delights Nursery, Missouri Botanical Gardens, American Horticultural Society, look at a bunch of different ones. Its size ranges from the size estimate that they put down ranges from 10 to 20 feet. And with Sweet Autumn Clematis as one of its parents, I think the smallest we were ever to keep one, we used to cut one all the way back to the ground in the spring, and it would get 9 to 12 feet. We always hoped for the 9, because if it got more than 9, it'd lap over the gutter and head for the roof, head up onto the roof. So I'm not sure that you're really going to be able to keep that controlled. It is nice that it'll still bloom when you cut it back hard, but some clematis are just not real cooperative. And Teresa also sent me these pictures. She said, "Can I straighten this tree up?" I think you need to take some branches off of the lakeside. It's going to seem harsh to do it, but I think you need to rebalance that tree. Yes, you can stake it and probably get it to stand up a little straighter, but with all the weight heading that way, you're stuck with it. And it is a weeping willow, so it is going to eventually go weeping over. So straighten it as much as you can. Just make it a gentle one. Do a figure 8 between your pole and here, so that the branch can move around, and make sure that there's something padding it. But I think I would take some branches off. And it's going to grow really fast. It's been growing really fast. You're not going to lose much by taking off branches. It'll seem terrible. You'll cut it back way hard. You'll take off all of the little branches coming forward here and maybe leave the 2 top ones that go up. But I think you need to do that. Haven't thought about it too terribly much, because that just came in, but that's where we stand right now. The hydrangea leaf tire. Isn't that a great name, Carol? The insects that tie up the leaves on the hydrangeas? Yes, a hydrangea leaf tire are out. They laid their eggs in the buds of the hydrangea, and as the hydrangea opened up, the little guys inside, the little caterpillars, begin eating, and they web the leaf together, so it becomes deformed and crumpled. It doesn't hurt the plant, and you can just take off every deformed set of leaves that you see there that are tied together. If you get a bunch of them before the caterpillars hatch out, well, then you've got that many less for the next go round. Yeah, they are a pain in the butt. Sometimes they're not there at all. Can you see why people have told me, well, I have a Samsonia, but it never bloomed? They miss it. If they don't go out in the spring and see the flowers coming now, because this is not this year, but it's this date in a previous year. And so if you miss those blooming, and then the plant does what it does and grows up past the flowering portion of the branch, people don't notice it at all, but it is a beautiful plant. We took the Amsonias out at the Waterford Library. We'll be there next Wednesday working, planting, designing, doing some weeding. If you'd like to come, we took the Amsonias out. They'd been there for the whole almost 10 years that we've been there, and it was time to change that area around. Once we took them out, there's now a carpet of Amsonia seedlings coming up there. Now those Amsonia seeds were there all this time, but they were being suppressed by the presence of the mother plant. Now that the mother plants are gone, it's a sod of Amsonia seedlings coming up. It's kind of cool to watch. Thanks for sending this, Jean. It's always great to see the life force in plants. This is a purple leaf smoke tree in Jean Nananovich's backyard, and she decided it wasn't doing too well, so she cut it all the way back. And see how hard she cut it, and cut up the roots. She said, and now it's coming back. Go ahead, let it come back. See what you can do with it. I probably would cut off more of this back chunk if you can, because those branches are just going to go through the fence into your neighbors, and focus on the other ones. But yeah, that's what they do. Are there any other questions? Had to take out the Sweet Autumn Clematis? Yeah, I recommend that everybody take out Sweet Autumn Clematis. It seeds itself around too much. It's impossible to stop it from seeding. It's so big by the time it blooms that even if you were to try to cut it off to deadhead it, you'd still. But we first saw it, it showed up around the block from us at our old house. We used to walk the dogs and talk to neighbors as we went around. And one of the neighbors said, look, I got a clematis coming up here. Tell me what I can do with it. And I looked, I said, what clematis did you? And there it was, Sweet Autumn Clematis coming up from our seeds in her yard. And then I saw it in another yard. At my friend Debbie's house, the neighbor, her next door neighbor, I can't remember if she moved or if she passed away, but the garden was left untended, and her Sweet Autumn Clematis continued over the burning bushes hedge up onto the roof, is now must be 7 houses down from them. Everybody's got a Sweet Autumn Clematis, so I would recommend that we not do those too crazy. Yeah, large, long roots, just enough for FYI. Yeah, Diane, we need to tell people that it is a heck of a thing to take out. I see a hand up. Oh, that's Therese. Go ahead, Therese.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about, and thank you for the info about WISP. I'll do what you say there. But the my little blue stem, I bought Standing Ovation a few years ago, and it's beautiful. I love it, and I just cut back all the old. I kind of sheared back the top, but it seems like it's really getting dense.
They do.
Yeah. So, do you recommend maybe, pie shaping that out? And, I don't know. What do you recommend?
Little blue stem can stay a long time as one clump. You really don't have to take it out, but it does build up a lot of old debris, especially if you don't cut it really hard. It's helpful if you have a situation like we do where we're growing it wild. All that debris that falls over, it doesn't stop the grass from growing back at all, but it does mulch the area real nicely. So yeah, you can go ahead and divide it, make more out of it. They're a little slow to build up in size, but if yours has gotten to be, maybe a couple feet across, you can easily divide that into pieces and not lose anything really in the way of size in the first year that you divide it.
Well, thank you. It's a beautiful plant, and I bought it, based on your guys' recommendation about little blue stems, and it changes color like 2 and 3 times. And at the 4th of July, there is orange, yellow, and red in that. It's gorgeous.
That's cool. That's very cool.
And it keeps a very neat habit. So thanks.
We were thinking about putting in a big blue stem this year, Steve and I, because the perennial plant of the year is big blue stem Black Hawks. And we thought, we should put this in, because I thought, I'm trying to keep things down in size a little bit, and little blue stem is kind of perfect. It's like my size as opposed to being over my head. So right. Any other, I gotta find out what time it is. Oh, it's time. So welcome to Free4All Friday. Tell people, anybody can come. This time of year, running like crazy, we all have something going on that we can probably talk about. This is our 75th edition. It's Friday, May 8th. We're coming to you from gardenatz.org, and I'm Janet McConovich. Stephen Nicola is absent today. We let him head off to hockey. Our grandson plays hockey, and he couldn't be happier than to watch that. Yeah, just like that, very happy. You know about our website. We, when I think about 75 Free4All Fridays and 187 webinars, I think, no wonder we don't have new articles up. We've got thousands of articles up on the site, but now we're putting up all videos, and I'd like to try to do that a different way. I might next year have to take a year off of doing webinars so that I can start sorting out the things that are there, and I'll work with a programmer to change things around. But there is a lot there. I hope it's useful to you because we intended it to be. And we intended to make sure that everybody who wants to can come join us on a Friday evening and get ready to tear up their garden that weekend, which is kind of what we do. Okay. The species tulips, the experiment with my not knowing that species tulips are supposedly deer resistant. I said they are. I've grown species tulips before, but we grew the yellow ones called Daysystemon and the pink ones called Pulchella, Tulipa Pulchella. And they haven't been eaten, but that doesn't really mean anything. The deer are hit and miss in our yard. There's one path that they follow where I can probably figure they'll be there, and I thought these were close enough to the path, but so far they seem like they're not eating them, and certainly the squirrels have not managed to do anything to them. We still don't have rabbits in our neighborhood, and I found out that the fox that we used to see frequently at our house has moved about 8 or 10 houses down. They're seeing them a lot down there, so we still have a fox around in the area, plus coyotes that come through sometimes. That's probably keeping our rabbits down. This week I have been mowing the lawn and resurfacing our deck, which we put a weatherproof coating on each year, and shopping. I've not had a lot of time to be in my garden because I've been looking for plants, and I'd really like to just go out, buy the plants I need, and come back home, but it's so varied when you get out there. Baskets, so single species baskets are running anywhere from $18 to $24, I find, depending on where you buy them. So I have a little chart, my little chart I filled out as I went along. For store A, the baskets were $17 with a few on sale at $15. This one was $18. I said, okay, so don't buy your baskets there unless they have something very special. Perennials, God, I remember when perennials cost $5, and that was a lot. And something that cost $14.99 right there. So call it $15 for a 6-inch perennial. Those are called a #1 pot or a 2-quart pot. Yeah, I think they call it a 2-quart pot. But those are beautiful plants. But I remember when the only thing that cost that much money was a brand new introduction like Stella Doro when she came out was $18 a piece. But now that's the standard. And I go looking for things like this is a big flat of 8 marigolds, and it's $8. I said, well, now that's a fairly good deal compared to what else is going on here. And I'm trying to do warm colors, so I mark it down and continue shopping. But I find $18 for some of these special coral bells. I did find them the larger perennials less expensive at one nursery, but on these patented plants, like some of these new coral bells, this one right here, you can't read it, was $19, even though everything else at that nursery was back down at $11 or $12 a pot. So you have to watch. And some of them, this is gold heart, bleeding heart. I remember when I first heard about a gold-leafed bleeding heart, I thought, who would want that? But it really is a spectacular plant. But it's been out for years. It's got to be 10 years, and it's still running at $30 here at these nurseries for a good-sized plant. I'm a little worried that people aren't going to be able to start gardens again. The Ito peonies, $75, $85, $102. It used to be that we got a few plants, and once we got plants, then we shared them around with other people, and we kept going, or we split them and moved them around. I'm thinking that the new people aren't really going to know aren't going to be able to do that, and these plants aren't going to bulk up quite as quickly. We have left the golden age of perennial and ornamental gardening behind here. Yeah, I do look too as I'm going through. I give the nurseries a little grade for how full their plants are and how healthy they are. I'm looking when people ask about how do you know, I'll tip them out of the pot. somebody can come and yell at me if they want, but I'll put my hand on the soil, tip the pot, and see whether it's going to slide out. If it slides out, then I know that it's not root bound. There is some indication if I don't have roots coming out the bottom that it's not root bound, but that doesn't mean that it's not all tied up inside. But I look for not root bound, but a nice full plant. Some of these plants, like that dianthus there that we're looking at, that's big enough to divide right away. And I do. New plants, like this is the supposedly dwarf Russian sage. I am tempted to try it again because it ought to do well in the dry soil here at our house, but Russian sage always got crazy with me in every other garden I put it into. It looks great in Nevada, in Arizona. Then it's a shrub, stands up straight, it's 5 feet tall, it's wonderful, but here it flops all over the place and suckers like a crazy thing. But I might try this one. $13, it might be worth an experiment. Starter perennials in the 4-inch pots. God, $7 just for a starter perennial. But if that's what you got to do. Now, most of these things, if it's not a patented plant, if it's not a variety with that single quote name like Sweet Summer Love or Purple Cascade or whatever these are called, you can start these things from seed, and it's fun to do. I was just looking through an old album from the 80s, an old photo album from the 80s at our house, and there was my cold frame with its top propped up and flats. I must have had 18 flats of started perennials in there. I mean, you can do it, and they do grow. They really do. But if I can get 2 for $5, so these are 4-inch perennials. It's not as great a selection, not as many species there, but getting one for $2.50 each versus paying $7 for each one. So I'm making my list, and I'll go back out to get my plants later. I'll probably buy them tomorrow, which is a terrible day to buy them on Mother's Day weekend, but I need to harden them off before I can take them to the library on Wednesday. And I've got a few hardening off right now. I slide them out of the garage, bring them in at noon so they don't get the hot sun, put them back out again. And I'm learning today not to leave that garage door open. One time when I went out there to check on watering them, there were 2 ducks in the garage. Steve keeps his bird feed in there. I had to shoo the ducks out. When I went back out later, there was a robin in there, and you know he's going to try to build a nest, or she's going to try to build a nest somewhere. I had to close the garage. I find that I have to look. I'm looking for Thunbergia to use at the Waterford Library. It's a nice vine, and it'll go on our wattle fence that we put on one end of the garden. It'll go with our color scheme, I hope. But I said, okay, good, they've got them, and they're $15 for a Thunbergia vine, which is one of those, God, I should have just started them from seed a while ago. But if I looked around, they had Thunbergia, here they are, in a 4-inch pot, and it's only $4. I went, okay, that's the better bet. You really got to look. This is a very good nursery near me. It's Bogey Lake Greenhouse, and I'll tell you a little bit later about talking with the owner. He said, yep, there are definitely people buying a lot of plants right now. And then, of course, there's the problem with some places have different colors, and I'm trying to get different colors of the Thunbergia. Not really interested in having just the yellow. And this one, there we go. Look at that color. Would that go with a hot color scheme with yellows and oranges? I think it would. So I might have to pay the higher price for the different one. Same thing goes with some of the perennials. Inside this nursery, they're selling maidenhair fern in 4-inch pots for $7, and it's Adiantum pedatum. It's maidenhair fern. Out in the, I don't think I have a picture of it, out in the perennial area, they've got it in larger pots for $17. So, you gotta look and see what's there, and it helps to know the botanical name so that you can say, yes, this is the plant that they said it's going to be. Has anybody else been out shopping and want to comment on prices there? And they are up. I think most of the nurseries that we went to are quite close to each other in price, and all of them are higher than last year. And partially that's the plants and the labor, but it's also heating those greenhouses is now costing more, and the pots are costing more, the tags are costing more, all of these petroleum products. What size pots are those 18 perennials? The $18 perennials, you can call them a gallon pot, but they're really a 2-quart pot. They're about 6 inches across the top. On low price gardening, I think Susan's asking about this. low price gardening to me is to, I have one new plant out there. It's something that I've been meaning to try for a while. It doesn't matter what it is, and it's a perennial. I will put it in. It does well. I'll divide it at the end of this year and have 3 of them, and I'll divide it next year and I'll have 12 of them. So low cost gardening to me is bulking things up in your own garden and starting things from seed and just shopping as much as you can. I don't think you can go real low anymore though with the perennials with the cost that they are now. Even the annuals. Think about the fact that we used to buy in flats for $10 a flat, and then it went up to $20 a flat for the premium plants. But now you can hardly even buy them in flats. You're buying in the what we used to call the blister packs, the cell packs, and that's what I've done. I bought 8 stock. Those are the sweet scented annuals that they didn't get into my son's planting, so we got some for him, and I got some bicolor marigolds. The fancy gingers blooming at my friend Deb's garden. This is a samura. It's a type of asarum is ginger, our wild ginger. Samura is an anagram, is that what they call it when you mix up the letters? An anagram of asarum. It's one of the Asian decorative gingers. Cool plant. Our native one doesn't have a showy flower on it. It's the flowers hidden underneath the leaves. What was it? We've been talking a lot about this winter. I really still think it's because the cold came in fast and hard. It's the house side of this U that took the brunt of it because it was not hardening off. It was against that warm brick, and it wasn't hardening off yet. Once the cold came in, the stuff that wasn't hardened off, those tissues died. So you're seeing the dead. You can clip it out or just wait. It'll grow over it. Something like this, it's healthy enough that it's going to keep going. But my neighbor's new arborvitaes, which he put in 2 years ago, and they were little bitty guys. They were doing quite well, and this year they have lots of, they really got hurt. Plants harden from the tips on down, so it's quite often on the trunk low down that they're the part of the plant that's not hardened off yet if they get caught. And if you look at these things, it's a little hard to see in the bright sun, but you can see that this one is brown all the way out to the tip. That's not the way arborvitaes work. They lose needles every year, but they lose old needles back on the branch, not all the way out to the tip. And we've seen a lot of those. Some of them we think are salt damage, but those are nowhere near salt. Those are just cold problems, and it's the west side of the plant that was most hurt. This is a Chinese spice bush that we have that you can see here. So the cells underneath the bark in the cambium literally exploded last winter as it got into December. It is alive below there. See the buds coming. So I can cut it back and know it'll come back, but it's probably going to happen again as our winters become more and more unsettled like this. Are there questions? So start. Okay. Whoa, you're ahead of me on the chat here, you guys. I don't have anybody watching it, so. Ford Fairlane has their plant sale. Yep, you gotta watch for those plant sales. The wild ones in Clarkston are having a native plant sale coming up. Tollgate's got a plant sale coming up. Chris is using starter perennials in her container with splashes of color from a few annuals. Good idea. You even use pieces from your houseplants to use as things that drape out the sides. So in the chat, Barb's giving the information about the Ford Fairlane estate. That's in Dearborn down near, what's the name of the mall? Fairlane Mall? May 15th and May 16th, so next weekend having a plant sale. Oh, sorry, my big old pointer here. Recent replaced are proven survive. Priscilla points out that Tollgate's plants, it's the first Saturday in June that they have their sale. And they are proven survivors. They don't put things out there that I have an iffy chance. Can you cut down the foliage from your colchicum, Sue? Yes, you can. I've got some pictures of foliage that we can cut down now coming up. Diane says she dug up a Bartzella. That's an Itopeony. because it made no appearance whatsoever above ground. After rinsing, I could see that it has 2 white eyes and 2 white 2-inch appendages broken off, even though I was so careful when I forked it up. She replanted it in a different bed, making sure that it's an inch below soil level. The other tree peony, Garden Treasure, ordered and planted at the same time, as a foot tall, leafed out and beautiful. The Ito peony, the peonies, we are told, sorry, I appear to have a cactus quill in my finger, so I'm poking up my finger here. We're told to put peonies into the ground so that the buds on the crown are an inch below soil level, or just at or just below soil level. The buds on these Ito peonies might be on the woody portion of the plant, and so it's quite common to have buds showing above ground too. And I don't think that makes a difference with how they're doing it. I'm not sure what would have set yours back, but you can get a plant that has issues from a garden center, as well as you can get it from moving it around in your own garden. I would give Barcella another chance because it's a very vigorous plant, and I've had I had a two eye division in 3 years become 20 eyes, so it should be growing pretty well. But I can't tell you for sure what else might be. Meadowbrook Garden Club has a sale, Michelle says, and she thinks it's May 15th. Yep, today would be the time. Teresa's trimming boxwoods, double bagging in black bags. Do you think it's necessary to double bag your boxwood debris in black bags? I don't think so. I think if your boxwood debris is going out in the yard waste, it's going to get composted plenty fast enough, and it's going to get tumbled around and pressed down hard enough that I don't think anything's going to escape from there. But extensions do have to err on the side of caution, and they are saying to double bag stuff, especially if you think that there might be caterpillars in there, to double bag it so we're not sending them further away than they could get on their own. There we go. Okay. This is Camassia. I was asked by a neighbor today, what is that blue thing blooming in your garden? That's Camassia. It's a bulb. Camassia, I can't lean the eye, is the white one. Camassia cassickii. It's native to the Pacific Northwest. And it is nice because it carries on after the tulips, the bigger tulips finish. And it's a big bulb about the size of a tulip. It likes wet. I put it in our ditch thinking that there would be some water there, and there's never any water there. It would do better and bloom better if it had more water. There are some varieties that are darker blue. There's one called Blue Danube that's a darker blue, and there's a different species that's white and taller. That's Camassia. Someone was asking about our native geranium at the webinar last week. This is the native geranium in bloom, with a bit of that pesty ostrich fern in the front of it. I wanted this goat. Like, I know what I'm going to do with it, but isn't it cute? You know that Steve and I garden for wildlife. In fact, the other day while I was editing the webinar video, I realized I can hear birds in the background on our webinar. We're about 8 feet from the window in my office. And although it's not open, there's a lot of birds out there. And this time of year, they're particularly rowdy. I've noticed that the oriole likes to give a call, and if another oriole calls, he wants to call louder again afterwards. So we're really into having wildlife out there. The butterflies, the bees, the birds, the chipmunks, the squirrels, wherever. And we're forever finding something else that we haven't seen before that tells us what the wildlife sees in our garden. I was weeding just in the back of where this picture, I took this picture. This is one of our native woodland phloxes, which is not only holding its own, but doing a good job of pushing back the brunnera and the perennial geranium, which are also ground covers in there. I didn't expect that, but I was watching it and the motion caught my eye. I'm not sure that you can see it, but there's a hawk moth in there, the first one I've seen this year. Right there is a hawk moth. That's the moth that can look a little bit like a hummingbird to some people, and some people call it a hummingbird hawk moth. I blew it up so you could see it, but there it is. You visited every flower. I said, oh, good. you like the phlox, you're out the first time, so I might buy some more phlox. This is another one of the phloxes, most of them bloom at this time. There are 2 species of woodland phlox I can put out there, so let's add some more phlox, I figure. And while I was there, so I had turned one way and noticed the hummingbird hawk moth. When I pivoted the other way to walk out of the garden where I'm working, this is where I have not cut down or even tried to break down the swamp milkweed from last year. We try to cut things down very slowly and gradually in the garden, especially in the wild garden. A lot of those things we leave there. It'll fall down, I'll leave it on the ground. And I was watching and caught the motion here. Can you see her? She's right there. There she is. The lady oriole was in there stripping off pieces hanging from the milkweed. And I know that these milkweed, you have to cut them. They will not, you can try to snap them if you want. They've got fibers in them that are not. And you know these birds, the orioles, make a woven nest that hangs as a sack off the end of a branch up at the top of a tall tree. This lady is weaving a nest and she's using our swamp milkweed to do that. So I'm very glad that it's up there. She was back and forth a lot in that area. So we think it's messy, cattails at the edge of a pond, but they're so essential. You see the nest in there. And Steve suspected, he said, yep, it's a red-winged blackbird, it's gotta be. He said, there's Mama coming back. And then he realized, no, it's not Mama, it's the 2 young ones that have gotten out of the nest and they're crawling around. They're well protected in there. They've got lots of places to climb. What's a mess to us is not a mess to the wildlife, and we have to try to see it in their point of view. I try really hard not to let the neighbors say anything to me about leaving stuff up. She's not a native, but they're fun to watch. So while I was shopping for plants today, manager at one greenhouse said, I hate to see people buying so early. He said, I need the money, and it's been another cold spring, but especially when younger people buy, I know they're going to get discouraged if those plants die. And that's so true. We need to be trying to tell more people. Like I told my son, what are you doing buying your annuals? He bought these 3 weeks ago, and they put them into their pots to go on the porch. And so now every night they move them in and out of the garage. I said, they can't take it. And he did not buy. He said, I couldn't find the spiky yellow and orange things. I said, that's celosia, Corey. I said, I'm glad you couldn't find those, because those are very sensitive to cold soil, like tomatoes are. So I've just brought that and set it down in there with his. But try to talk to more people about they shouldn't plant things early. It's quite a vicious cycle. We go in early looking for things. The garden centers grow things, bring things on earlier. They're even higher up and not good to put out. There are some nurseries that will put the pansies and the cold weather plants out and harden them off for you, which is really nice. But they're still not going to do great when it's going down to 40 degrees at night and 35 degrees at night. Now I look for, one of the things that I look for besides the price, is I'm looking for plants that are at the same stage that they would be if they were growing in the garden. We had in my area a nursery that grew everything outside. And she's retired now and is not there anymore, so I miss that. But I want a plant that when I put it in the ground, so this Campanula blue clips, which is one of the tried and true carpeting, restrained, non-crazy bellflowers, and that's as far up as it is in the garden. I said, now that would be a good one, harden it off and put it in. Cannas like warm soil. I'm looking for variegated cannas this year for the library. Looking for yellow and green variegation, and I've only found them at a $40 canna, so I'm not buying that yet. But cannas would not be up now. If you put them in the ground now, they will emerge from the ground 3 weeks from now or so. They wait for warm soil, so you don't want to have those out there. And new stuff, this is Crespidia, I've never heard of before. Little balls at the end of and I like the gray kind of grassy foliage. I said, oh, maybe I could do something with that, but I'm only going to buy one of it, and I'm certainly not going to put it out until after the crabgrass germinates, so I know the soil is warm. And I'll watch what it does, and then I might know in future years whether I can buy those early or late, or what I can do with them. I made the mistake of showing this to Sonia, my daughter. Her husband is a nut for delphiniums. And I said, did you know there's a coral colored delphinium? She said, oh no, Mom, don't show that to Cam. Isn't that beautiful? That's a gorgeous plant. Probably I'll go back and they'll all be gone now. It's at Bogey Lake Greenhouse for those who are in the area. But I'm doing a hot color combination at the library this year in our annual, so I'm looking for things that will really pop in reds and oranges. And it's nice to be in a nursery where they arrange things that way. I like to write things down, and now I don't even have to write them down. I just take a picture of what I'm thinking of doing, because when I'm in the nursery, I can actually see whether or not those reds and oranges go together or whether they clash. You can walk around with a packet of plants and put them next to other things, because it's amazing how many reds have too much blue in them to really go well with some of the yellows, and how some of the yellows are too pale to go with some of the oranges. So I like to shop at the garden center, and that makes it nicer to do on days when you can go in there on a weekday with your little tray cart and just put things on it and walk through. Yeah, Diana's saying the same thing about the plants in her area, down in the Toledo area. The plants are already overgrown, rather than the young plants that we want for easier planting and longer life, and the plants sell out because everyone's buying early. It's, like I said, it's a vicious cycle. People put plants out and they come and buy them. Now, I do find that at the farmers markets, they've figured this out already, and they grow two crops. They have the early crop, and one guy told me, he says, they're going to come buy them twice. I'm going to grow them twice and sell them to them twice. So they will bring later plants that are not overgrown and not pot bound. But it is a hard thing to do. Look at those colors, aren't those great? I grabbed some of the bicolor marigolds because there weren't very many of them, and I didn't need very many, but I said, if I come back here and they're gone, I'll be sorry. So to the point of being ahead, so these Veronicas are forced. They've been grown in a greenhouse, started early in order to have them in bloom, because the growers know, the garden center people know that we will buy them if they've got color. But in the ground, this is what Veronica looks like right now. That's last year's stems that I haven't cut down back there. I broke them off here so you could see it, but there's not an indication of this. This won't bloom until middle and end of June, and I like it to bloom at the middle and end of June because it'll bloom for a long time. I had a problem with one garden that I designed for somebody who I gave them the design and a little chart that showed what was going to be blooming when, to know that they had stuff to bloom all year long. They called and they said things aren't blooming when they're supposed to. I said, it's the first year, and some of those things were started early. We're going to have to wait until next year when they all get in sync with the actual weather outside. What do we do with our marigolds? Diana's wondering what I do with my marigolds. I use them I use annuals in gardens as if they're perennials. I'll put in a clump of 3 marigolds to grow up in a space to complement one sedum, one of the variegated tall sedums. So I generally use annuals as if they are perennials, and I'm using them for their longer color. I don't usually lay them out as edging or put in a whole big congregation of them, because if there's a lot of annuals all blooming together and continuously blooming all summer, they tend to make the perennials near them look like something's wrong. Like, how come those guys aren't blooming so well? I was working with a neighbor who wants to know about gardening, and I found myself thinking, I'm not really into teaching somebody how to do this right now. I did that with so many people that worked for me over the years, and it takes a whole year to get people to understand what has to be done and what time. But I do know that there's no one approach that's effective. I taught this neighbor what I could about loosening the soil and taking weeds out, but I watched and know that I'm going to have to come back and tell her again that you can't just take the top off of a weed. My friend Celia would say you're just making it mad that way, that you have to loosen and take the roots out too on most of these things. We were working in this area here, where we have a lot of, I can see the purple haze here. There's a lot of dead nettle that got in to the sweet woodruff back here, and some other problems. I showed her loosening with a fork to take out, this is a slippery dock. I've forgotten what the botanical name of slippery dock is, but it is slippery. You try to pull that turkey out and the leaves turn into slime when you try to pull it, but it's got that deep taproot like a dandelion, so you gotta loosen and take the whole thing out. The nice thing about the taprooted weeds, I tell people, is I said you can let those go till later. As long as they're not dropping a lot of seed, you just cut off the top of them. You know where they are, you know they're not going to spread sideways. You can come back and get them later. But the ones that spread sideways, those are the real problems. And I have to watch out with new gardeners and things like, this is Gaillardia. Here's where the Gaillardia was last year. Gaillardia is blanket flower, yellow. The flowers are daisy shaped, but the petals tend to be orange or orange-red and yellow in patterns. And it's a plant that comes up off of suckers from the roots. You wouldn't expect it to, but little nodules on the spread out roots are what are going to come up, and I can see them coming up here. But my neighbor thought that they had died, so it's following all along one of the roots. These are all shoots that are coming up as Gaillardia, and over here and over here. It's fun to teach people to garden, but I don't think that any of us can expect that people are going to catch on to stuff right away. We have to kind of put up with it. I basically just told the neighbor at a certain point, I said, I'll handle the weeds over in that area because I know I was going to have to go back and do them anyway. I mulched with one of the kids in the neighborhood this week, this Monday, and I just had about an hour before I had to get back and do another coat on the deck. And one of the neighborhood kids stopped by. He's riding on his nose, I tell him, because twice before he said he would help me in the garden, and I said, well, come by tomorrow, I'll have work for you to do. And he didn't come by twice. I said, so you're on your nose one more time and you're gone. Well, he showed up and said, I'd like to work with you, and I see you're out here now. I said, okay. I wasn't going to mulch, but come on back with me. We took the wheelbarrow around to the backyard, loaded the wheelbarrow up with from the leaf pile that my neighbor puts all of his leaves in there for me, and wheeled that wheelbarrow back around to the front. I checked my watch before we started so that I could figure out how much to pay him, since we work on an hourly wage here. And we got to the front, we put about 3 handfuls of mulch down, and he said, I think I better go home, my back hurts. I looked at my watch, 6 minutes. So my friend Deb was calling it, your 6-minute gardener, could I borrow your 6-minute gardener? But eventually he may come around and do a little bit more. Ginkgo's leaving out. Okay, we've been working on our fritillarias. We've told you about the lily leaf beetle. Pretty much as soon as those fritillarias came up and were 3-4 inches high, we started finding them. Not very many. For 2 years we've been patrolling the fritillaria, which is the only plant that we've got that this lily leaf beetle lives on. They also live on Asiatic lilies, but we don't grow any of those. And for 2 years we've been going out from the time those fritillaria come up, and we find the leaf beetles and we squash them. And this year we've had far, far fewer than we had before, but they're still there. And at least a few of them got away. There was one day when I went out and I saw 4 of them, but I was only able to catch 2 of them and squish them. So we continued doing this year what we've done before. Hello, lily leaf beetle. We cut them down. So they're finished blooming. They were all through this area. And as soon as they finished blooming, I just cut them off. If there's any lily leaf beetles still crawling around in that mulch and coming up and down and expecting to lay eggs for the next generation, we have just denied them food. There's nothing there for them to eat. They can't eat cup plant. They can't eat globe thistle or peony. They can only eat the fritillaria, and I've cut them down and taken them away. They still grew up and bloomed this year. This was last year as I'm cutting them down. And I think there were more flowers on them last year because I should have. It would have been nice to be able to leave the greens up longer. But they still did flower this year. They still did come back. And if that'll get us out of this, it'll break the loop of our having to keep crawling around squashing these lily leaf beetles every year, I'm all for it. But I think one of the war crimes is when you wipe out farm fields and starve people to death, or so we're basically using a war crime against this particular pest, deny it food. But we do the same thing. Here's daffodil foliage right now today. Sorry that it's washed out, but it's one of those bright shadowy days. I start cutting them down. If they're in the garden and bothering me right now, I say, you're beginning to flop. I cut them down. It does not stop them from coming back. Not when they've been up. At this point, they've been up all of April and part of May. And that's long enough for them to come back the same size as next year. So yeah, you can cut down colchicum leaves, you can cut down daffodil leaves. I'm leaving my colchicum leaves up. That's the fall blooming crocus, which are just leaves in the spring and then naked flowers in the fall. I'm leaving the leaves up because I'm going to get around to dividing one of the clumps again. At $10 a bulb, I don't want to plant purchase colchicum. I just keep dividing the ones we have and moving them around. More Chamacia in among sea kale, cranberry, which in some places, like in my front yard here, is coming into bloom already. Michelle wants some of the short Solomon seal. The Polygonatum humili. Michelle, we have plenty of it here. I know Deb has some. I'm trying to think of anybody closer to you. You're welcome to come over and I'll dig some up for you, or point you at it and you can dig it up. We were asked this week what we meant by a living mulch, because we've said before, sometimes you can just use a living mulch. So this is the bed along our driveway, between our driveway and our neighbor's driveway. And this is vernal sweet pea, making a little hedge around a beech tree there. In the bed originally, besides being goutweed and a bunch of other weeds, there was dayflower. It's a native annual plant, but you can treat it as a weed. But I let some of it come up the first year and found that the pollinators loved it. The little blue flowers, which are only open for part of each day, the little blue flowers were loaded with bees all the time, so I let it come up. Now, as I've been placing other things in the garden and spreading them out to grow, I'm going to tail that back. So that's what it looks like. These are all seedlings. And as they come up that thick, they're stopping other things from coming up in that area. There could be bittercress, there could be bells of Ireland, there could be a calendula, there could be a lot of things that seed themselves around, but these are crowding it out too much to do that. I will let those grow there for another 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then they'll be very easy to pull out. This is the straw from last year's plants that laid down there. But as long as they're there, they're covering other things up and keeping other things from growing. So you can call that a living mulch. And then this is last year. I took them out all around the plants that I've been spreading in there. There's coral bells in here that I'm spreading. There's the vernal sweet pea. This is all that I just grabbed them and yanked them out. And now that can be used as mulch. It's not gone to seed yet. I can just put it right on the garden and mulch things. That's what I mean by a living mulch. Also, says the goose. Okay. So Michelle and Priscilla are using the chat here to arrange swapping plants. Love it, you guys. Love it. I might not have enough here to talk about, unless you want to talk about finishing my deck. There is a species of muscari, grape hyacinth, that doesn't spread by seed quite so readily. I hope you know that this one does spread and gets into everything when it wants to. The leaves come up in the fall, and generally in Michigan they burn off over the winter, whereas they would stay green all winter long in a warmer climate. But it doesn't bother them to get burned off, and they do bloom nicely, leaf or no leaf, later on. Our native tall Solomon seal, Polygonatum commutatum. The Asian Solomon seal with the white edge, Polygonatum odoratum, variegatum. Oh, sorry, wrong button. I like weeding. I know that it never stops, but for some people they say it's a real drag. They don't like to do it. Other people, like Jean told me today, it's kind of a meditation. She likes to weed. It's also a chance to visit every plant and see what's going on. When you're close up to things, you can really see what's happening. So here in Jean's garden, what you're looking at is primarily chickweed. It's chickweed, although I do also see some leaves of maybe oxalis or one of the Dutch clovers, and the flowers of Bethlehem sage. Not Bethlehem sage. Star of Bethlehem, which is a terrible weed and Jean is working on. This got really bad, chickweed, last fall in our patio garden, and that spread out so much that it was almost covering the flagstones with it. It had rooted between stones, but almost covering the stones. I weeded all that out and re-sanded the joints in the flagstone, got some sand and put it in. And now I'm back to my age-old routine of, in that area, on the stones. I wouldn't do this in the regular garden. I walk out every morning with a tea kettle full of boiling water, and I pour it around some of the stones to kill the seedlings as they're coming up. And that's pretty effective on killing the seedlings. I'm not going to use herbicide. I've told you I'm a low-tech kind of person, but I also am very concerned about being exposed to any more herbicides, since that's probably what my Parkinson's is rooted in. But this is something where I would take a fork and loosen the area and grab where all these leaves, all these branches are coming together to pull that whole plant out of there. You could probably smother these, but not once they've gotten big enough where they were growing all fall and spring to be laying on top of the hosta. You'd have to pull them over the hosta. But you could, in a couple areas in my yard. I'm done with the Pennsylvania pellitory. We left it up. It's an annual native, and we left it up for the sake of some of the butterflies that might host on it as caterpillars. But it's gotten a little carried away with itself. So I just took a single layer of newspaper, put it down, and then put enough mulch down to hold the newspaper down. It saves me on mulch and does a better job of smothering these little things. Speaking of weeds, this is Europhalspirea. I need the full-size one again, Priscilla. I didn't manage to get the other one in the ground soon enough, but I do love this plant. This is probably, Jean can tell us, SEM, S-E-M, that's the variety name of Europhalspirea, which is supposedly a little shorter and maybe a little more colorful, but I think all the Europhalspireas, Sorbaria, sorbifolia, Ural mountains, Europhalspirea, it leaves out real early, and it does that wonderful thing of leafing out apricot and going to gold and then to green. I like it because it blooms in June, late June and July. And if you deadhead it, it'll keep blooming, and the butterflies like it a lot. Also grow in the shade where a lot of other things won't. But you're visiting plants and you can look at things and go, okay, my blueberry didn't bloom as well as it should bloom, or didn't bloom at all. Take a look at the leaves. See how they're bronzed? When you're up close to plants and looking at them, you can realize there's something, you're not right. You're bronzed a little. It's probably an alkaline soil problem. Dawn Green, for our edibles garden, putting edibles into the garden, was explaining how much better it is when you grow them in a container, and you can grow a blueberry bush in a big container. It's much easier to keep that soil alkaline than it is to acid, which is what blueberries want, than to try to grow it in naturally alkaline soil, which is what a lot of southeast Michigan, Ohio, the Midwest has a lot of alkaline soil. But if they're not getting what they need, they're not going to produce flower buds and grow as well as they could. But the nice thing is you can take a garden, and when you're done, you can say, wow, that looks so nice now. And yeah, it does help to have mulch. My neighbor was over today, where I did get out for a bit to get you pictures mostly. And I was pulling weeds away from the plants I was going to take pictures of. Karen came over and she said, well, your lupin is spreading around so much, and you've got so many of them, and you have so many penstemon. In part, that's because Steve and I don't mulch where we're trying to naturalize. We're allowing plants to come up. When you have bare soil, you get all kinds of things coming from seed. Our perennial lupins are coming from seed. Our bloodroot's coming from seed. But if you put a mulch down, it does keep a lot of those seedlings from sprouting, especially if it's a chunky mulch that a little bitty seedling can't get around. So you have to do the trade-offs. They have to do the trade-off that says, okay, I'm going to leave a space clear here, and I'm going to scatter some cosmos seeds, let them get started, and then over the years I'll leave a few areas that I want to have cosmos in free and see if they can spread around. I haven't done it in quite a while now. I used to take a seed stalk, a ripened seed stalk, off of the plant that I wanted, put it down where I'd like them to be the next year, and put a metal clip over it to hold the stalk down, so that in the spring when I came through mulching and I went to move that stem out of the way, I would find it pegged down to the ground and remember, oh, that's right, there's seeds here, and I won't mulch that particular small area. Diane is saying that she was sorry she missed the edibles webinar. It was a lot of fun talking to Dawn. We have heard from some people about our webinar on this past Saturday that they expected that there'd be more showing the edible plants in an ornamental garden. We showed you how to grow them, that you can grow cherry tomatoes on an arbor, that you can grow blueberries in a pot, that you can intensively garden in a small container in among your, but there aren't very many people who are doing it mixed in. So we could tell you how to, but we couldn't show you it actually accomplished we did in some, there were some of the pictures that were like that. But we're definitely going to have more edibles out there this year, Steve and I. See them from Chatica, Mahasta, and Pulmonaria all together. Verbascum, mullein. Sometimes you just let them come because they're cool plants with big leaves. Looks good with the sweet woodrue. Just hope it doesn't crowd out your hosta. I think that's all I've got. So unless you guys have questions, we might be done early tonight. Let's see what's going on here. Uncannily useful webinar subjects. Thank you, Diane. I love watching them over again because when we're doing a webinar, I tend to be paying attention to just the narrow path that we set, and it is a pretty narrow path. Once I can look at the chat, listen to it, go back over it, because it takes me a while to edit it. I have to find the places where I can break it up and what to describe, what parts are what's in each part. I think we have some wonderful people that we've had do our webinars, and we've had great participation from you guys out in the field as it is. So yeah, tell people the plants are kind of costing too much. Share as much as you can share. Allium, or Michelle has allium to give away if you're looking at the chat. Allium did have a great winter. Go figure. Some things didn't and some things did, but the giant allium anyway, they either sit and you plant 3, you have 3 for 5 years and then they begin to degrade, or they spread themselves around. There doesn't seem to be any in between on the alliums. Okay, so I don't see any other questions here. Oop, not so far. Oh, a cedar tree. That makes a wonderful mulch. I am buying a very fine mulch. I'll have pictures for it for you next Friday. Our next webinar, our next Free4All Friday is next Friday the 15th. I'll bring you pictures of the mulch we're using. I think we're okay here. Yep. So unless somebody's got questions. Oh.
Hi, Janet.
Okay, go for it.
Hi, Nancy. I wanted to let you know we've been looking at some of the companion plants that you recommended for the Sargentino crabapple.
Oh, good.
And we've been scouting the nurseries to see who has what and to see if we could, we want to see them actually in person so that, as you said, we could put plants next to each other and see what we're looking at. So that's what we've been doing.
You think you might be ready by just after Memorial Day to put plants out there and we can bring some people over to your house then?
Yeah, and I don't know if we should go ahead and Well, I don't want to go ahead and buy the plants now.
Yeah,
Be-
let's find a date then. If you've been looking and you are at a point where you're about ready to decide which to buy,
Yeah,
let's talk about a date and we can figure numbers of plants that you need or that you want to start with.
okay,
And
okay,
once we have that date, then you'll be able to buy plants just ahead of that time.
okay. We did see beautiful bird's nest spruce at Telly's.
Good.
Gorgeous.
Love
So
it.
and here I am wondering, okay, should we buy one of those before they're all gone?
Yes.
You know, the ones that tend to be gone in the springtime, and what I found over the years is that if it's flowering, like you try to find a Korean spice viburnum, which smells wonderful and blooms right now,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to grab them. They have no idea what they are or what they're going to do with them, but they grab them because there's a flower on them. Because the bird's nest spruce don't have a flower on them and they're evergreens, I don't think that you're going to have to worry about them being gone.
Okay.
But the stuff that's forced into bloom, yeah.
Okay. And one thing we've been having trouble finding is the Carex, I think it was called Ice Dancer.
Ice dancer, that's that, and that would be a problem, like with hostas and the daylilies and the coral bells that are introduced each year. That's an older variety from 10 years ago, and so it's
Okay.
probably been supplanted by others. I think I know somebody who has that still in their garden, and I could call her and find out if we can get that from her. Otherwise, that might end up becoming a mail order thing. I don't know any others that had such a clean white variegation on them. A lot of the Carex have a gold variegation on it, but white seemed like the better one to use if you were going to put in a Sargentina crab.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And I think you had suggested a date before June 13th.
Yes, yeah, and that's on the calendar, but if we can move it up, I think,
Okay,
yeah, good.
okay, great. Okay, thank
Maybe I'll
you.
use that June 13th date to go and talk to Bernie's nephews about their design. We can get that one going. Okay. Any other questions? New Jersey tea. We grew New Jersey tea a long time ago. 15, 20 years ago, we put in New Jersey tea. And I felt good about growing a native plant, but I was not terribly impressed with its design capabilities. It didn't do a lot for me. I had to grow things that were very coarse or very fine near it because it's such a middle of the road kind of plant. But it did grow pretty well. I don't know what we did with those plants. Probably moved them over to somebody else's garden. Anybody else grow New Jersey tea? That'd be inland ceanothus. Is that what they call it? I can't think ceanothus what it is. Omovatus ceanothus. There are a bunch of ceanothus like California ceanothus. It's a beautiful blue blooming binding plant, and people would love to grow that. But this is not quite so showy as that. And Donna, yes, we are. We have next. Is that next Friday? Is it the 15th? Yeah, 15th or the 18th. We do have a workshop coming up in Rochester Hills, and that's at Donna's house. She's got a ditch that she doesn't want to mow, and we're working on a design for that. And that is on our calendar page. I could run and get the calendar right now, but it is on the calendar page. It is set for that date. That's when we're going to be there. We don't know quite what we're going to do, but we're going to take it from the ground up and see if we can figure it out. Americanas, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm losing my plant names, I think. But I'm going to close this out if there's no more questions because I'm kind of hungry. It's dinner time. No more questions, no more hands up. You're a great group of people. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next Friday, May 15th, if you want to come for Free4All Friday. You know you can email or text or call us with questions. That's where most of them come from, and it keeps us on our toes, which is where we want to be. Well, on our knees when we're not on our toes. Talk to you later.